What was it that led me here? What was it that made me the way that I am? Ultimately, my poor choices led me to my doom. My actions created havoc among the ones that I love. And I have come to accept that I have a problem dealing with feelings of being hurt, especially when they involve a woman in my life. I remember the exact moment that my mind was made up that I was going to throw away my sobriety and use drugs again. The feeling of being hurt, of being let down, heartbreak, the persisting agony of betrayal, of love began to consume my body. I couldn't think, I couldn't rationalize. Bit by bit, I let the devil in, making it easier for him to do his job. It wasn't long after I began to drink and use drugs again. Deep down, I knew it was over right there. It was pointless to convince myself otherwise. The feeling of power over my weakness was there, hindering in the darkness. Soon I felt invincible, important. I got attention when I needed it, and I felt good about myself, and in no time at all, my worries existed no more. It wasn't long after that I found someone to fill my void of companionship, my void of despair and my codependency illness. I began to forget about reality, forget about my family, forget about the ones that I cared for the most. It was okay at the time because I wasn't obsessing over the girl who broke my heart. Time moved on, and I slowly began to let myself slip. I started bringing drugs around my house where I lived with my mother. I manipulated situations of reality, making it okay to do what I was doing, making it okay for a crime to be a suitable substitute, which became my income. My mind began to slip and tick like a bomb waiting to go off. I eventually began to follow the Robin Hood theory, steal from the rich and give to the poor. I convinced myself that I needed it more than they would. The devil wrapped another finger around my closely construed concept of reality, stripping my sense of consciousness. You think I cared about whose property I was stealing and the lives that I was damaging? I didn't. Because the importance and justification of feeding my family plagued that idea. When in reality it was only feeding my addiction. Barely any of that money went to my family. And this was the very concept that left my children without a father when they needed him the most, and the same idea that drove me to madness, leading me to selfishness and pity, eating away at my soul like a disease. My days turned into weeks, and my weeks turned into months. The more that I tried to justify my actions, the deeper I fell into that deep, dark hole. I remember New Year's Eve, supposed to be spent on celebrations, a time of making healthy resolutions. I spent my night in a harm reduction housing apartment with a girlfriend and another fellow friend from the street. And we slept, mostly because of the fact that we were up for many days at a time. I remember thinking about my mother and if she was okay. She spent most of her days probably worried and consumed with the fear of something bad happening to me. My relationship lacked sincerity with my mother, when all she ever wanted to do was spend some quality time with her son. My mind was faded. I was clouded with the proliferating idea of having to get things done. The beginning days of February began to creep by. This month brought hardship, a lot of arguing, fighting, and heartbreak. My quality of life became apparent. There was no hiding it. I can clearly remember putting on a pair of jeans and shaking my head in grossness on how much weight I have lost. I barely slept and my skin became pale and I had dark rings under my eyes. I went from dress clothes to gangbanger. I had absolutely no fear. It wasn't long after that I began carrying guns and weapons on me. I was angry. I was angry at myself. By this point in my addiction, if I didn't have drugs in my system, I couldn't function. I was a train wreck in motion, with nothing to stop me. I blocked anyone who cared about me on social media, knowing very well I didn't want to face the idea that I was in the midst of a full-fledged addiction. The devil was smiling, knowing very well that he had done his job, closing his last finger, gripping my soul, my ambitions, my dedications. I would take anything that I wanted, hurt anybody who I felt like hurting, and my addiction grew into committing crime, and committing crime grew into dealing illegal drugs and further down a road of a dark path. Risk-taking became a full-time job. The seriousness of feeding my family worked its way off my agenda list. I replaced more and more illegal investments with the importance of my family's needs. What was my rock bottom? And what was it going to take me to stop me from my own destruction? Only I can answer that. There are two things: death or jail. And believe me when I say this, I have God to thank, for I am alive and well. My children have a father, my mother has a son, and my siblings have a brother. And me, I am alive and well, leaving behind the assault of the enemy. I have been told that most people have their conversions on their deathbed. I believe I was close. God waits for us to let him in our hearts. John Gospel 1:15. Listen to me, O islands, and pay attention, you peoples from afar. The Lord has called me from the womb. From the body of my mother he named me. He has made me like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he has concealed me. And he has made me like a select arrow. He has hidden me in his quiver. He said to me, you must toil in vain. I have spent my strength for nothing in vanity. Yet surely the justice due to me is with the Lord, and my reward with my God.